I was halfway through my walk to the maintenance shop when something made me slow down. It was early, the air still cool, the street lined with damp grass that hadn't yet dried from the night. That is when I noticed her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, standing at the bus stop by herself. Pink coat zipped all the way up, backpack strap clenched so tightly that her knuckles looked pale. She wasn't just waiting for the bus like the other kids usually did. She was bracing herself as if the ride ahead was something to survive. The bus hadn't even turned the corner yet, but her whole body was tense. Her shoes shuffled in the gravel, her eyes fixed on the street like she expected something bad to come out of the morning fog. For a moment, I just stood there, not moving, because there was something about the way she looked. I had seen fear before, real fear. Years ago, in uniform, watching young soldiers about to step into danger. It was the same kind of look, only now it was on the face of a child waiting for a school bus. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just nervous about a test, or maybe she had a rough morning at home. But then I noticed the strap of her backpack. It was frayed, one side held together with a knot, like it had been yanked too hard and never fixed. She kept twisting it in her hands, over and over, almost like she was holding on for safety. When the yellow bus finally pulled up, brakes squealing, she flinched so hard that I felt it in my chest. Not the startled kind of flinch, but the kind you see when someone is expecting a hit. The door opened and she climbed on without a word. She never looked around, never greeted the driver, just walked down the aisle stiff as a board. And just before the door closed, she glanced back, not at me exactly, but past me, as if hoping somebody, anybody, would notice. That look stayed with me the rest of the day. I tried to brush it off, telling myself kids have bad mornings. Still, by the time I sat down in my small apartment that night, the image kept replaying. Her little shoulders, hunched as though she was shrinking from something no one else could see. The television was on, but I wasn't hearing it. All I could think was, why would a child look like that before school? I leaned back in my chair and let the question hang in the silence. Maybe I was imagining it, or maybe it was the kind of thing everyone else had learned to ignore. But if you've ever worn the weight of fear before, you recognize it when you see it. And once you do, it is almost impossible to turn away. That night I could not sleep. I kept picturing the way her shoulders tightened as the bus pulled up, and the way she turned just before the door closed. It was not the look of a kid having a bad day. It was the kind of look that begged someone to notice, even if no words were spoken. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I walked to the window and looked across the parking lot. The little girl, Lily, I remembered now that I had heard her mother call her once, lived 2 buildings over. Her window faced mine, and a thin lamp glowed behind the curtains. I watched for a moment, not wanting to intrude, but what I saw made my chest tighten. Lily sat at a small desk, head bent, her pencil moving fast across a sheet of paper. For a second, she looked like any kid finishing homework. But then she froze, pressed the pencil so hard the paper bent, and suddenly ripped it from the notebook. She crumpled it into a ball and tossed it toward the trash. It missed, rolling under the open window. I hesitated, then pulled on a jacket and stepped outside. The night air was damp, carrying the hum of a distant highway. I walked to the spot below her window, crouched down, and found the little paper ball. It was soft from her small hands, edges torn. I unwrapped it slowly. The words inside were shaky, scratched across the page as if written in a rush. No one believes me. That was it, 4 words, but they hit like a punch. I stood there under the dim porch light, holding that fragile piece of paper, and for the first time I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Kids write things all the time. Angry notes, silly doodles, nonsense scribbles. But this wasn't nonsense. This was a message she could not say out loud. I carried the note back inside and laid it flat on the table, smoothing out the wrinkles with my hand. I kept staring at it, thinking about the backpack strap, the flinch, the way she never smiled. I told myself maybe it was nothing, maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen soldiers write quick notes like this when they felt cornered, when they did not think anyone was listening. The television was still on, some late-night talk show cracking jokes, but it felt like noise from another world. My eyes kept going back to the paper. No one believes me. By the time I finally crawled into bed, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever this was, it was bigger than just a bad morning at the bus stop. And if no one else was going to pay attention, maybe it had to be me. The next morning, I walked out earlier than usual, the note still folded in my pocket. The words stayed with me, heavy as a stone. I figured I couldn't just watch from the sidelines anymore. Maria, Lily's mum, was standing by her car, fumbling with her keys and a travel mug. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, the kind you only get from too many overnight shifts and not enough rest. She worked at the hospital, I had heard, and it showed in every tired movement she made. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone light. She gave me a polite smile, the kind neighbours trade when they barely have the energy for small talk. I hesitated, then held out the paper. "I think this belongs to Lily. I found it near the apartment." Maria frowned, took the crumpled sheet and smoothed it with her thumb. Her eyes flicked over the shaky words. For a second, I thought I saw something, fear maybe, or recognition, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She folded it again and gave a little laugh that did not sound natural. "She's dramatic sometimes," Maria said, brushing her hair back. "Kids write things when they're upset. It's just school stress, new place, new faces. She'll be fine." Her voice cracked on that last word, but she pushed forward, as if rehearsing lines she had told herself a dozen times already. "I don't think it's just stress," I said quietly. "She looked scared yesterday, really scared." Maria's smile tightened. "She's fine," she repeated, firmer this time. "I appreciate the concern, but I've got it handled." She tossed the note into her bag, shut the car door, and drove off before I could say another word. I stood there in the morning air, watching the tail lights fade. Part of me wanted to believe her, to let it go. After all, she was Lily's mother. Who was I to interfere? But another part of me remembered the look on Lily's face as that bus door closed, remembered the way she flinched, remembered the words on that page. Fine, people say it all the time, I'm fine. But fine is a word that hides more than it reveals. Fine is what people say when they can't admit the truth out loud. I walked away slowly, my hands shoved deep into my pockets, but I knew I wasn't convinced. And the more I tried to shake it off, the more I felt it. This wasn't going away. Something was wrong, and pretending otherwise wasn't going to make it disappear. The following morning, I slowed my steps as I passed the bus stop. Lily was there again, same pink coat, same backpack slung low on her shoulders. The knot in the strap had loosened even more, one thread dangling like it could snap any second. She kept her eyes down, toeing the gravel with her shoe. I stopped a few feet away, crouched so I wouldn't tower over her. "That bag's been through a lot, huh?" I said gently. She blinked, surprised that I had spoken to her. For a moment she didn't answer, then gave a small shrug. The strap slipped again and she caught it quickly, clutching it like it was the only thing holding her together. "Mind if I take a look?" I asked. Hesitation flickered in her eyes, but she slowly handed it over. The fabric was torn where the stitching had given out, the kind of rip that happens when someone yanks too hard. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a little roll of tape and a small clip I always carried for repairs. Old habit. My work in maintenance had taught me to never walk around empty-handed. In a couple of minutes, I patched the strap enough to hold. It wasn't perfect, but it would keep the bag from slipping. Then I clipped on a small keychain I'd been carrying, a silver coin with a tiny star etched into it. "This should make it stronger," I said, handing it back. She took the backpack, staring at the little star. Her lips pressed together like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Finally she whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time I'd heard her voice more than a single word. When the bus pulled up, she climbed aboard the same way she always did, quiet, careful, bracing herself. But just before the door closed, she looked back at me. Not with fear this time, but with something softer. It wasn't a smile exactly, but it was close. I stood there long after the bus drove away, the sound of the engine fading down the street. The image of her holding that patched-up bag stayed with me. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sometimes all you can do is offer the smallest bit of strength for someone else to hold on to. And sometimes that's enough to remind them they're not alone. By the end of the week, I decided I couldn't just keep watching from a distance. The note, the flinch, the torn strap, none of it sat right with me. So I walked into the school office one afternoon, still wearing my work boots, and asked to see the principal. She greeted me with a practiced smile, the kind that never quite reached the eyes. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and fresh printer ink. Diplomas lined the wall behind her desk, each one a silent reminder of authority. "I'm worried about one of your students," I began carefully. "Her name's Lily. I live in her building. I've seen some things that don't feel right. She looks terrified getting on the bus, and I found a note that said no one believes her." The principal's smile stiffened. "We take all concerns seriously," she said, voice smooth. "But I can assure you, we've had no reports of bullying. Lily is a quiet girl adjusting to a new school. These things can take time." Her words sounded polished, almost rehearsed. I leaned forward, trying not to let frustration slip into my tone. "I'm not imagining this. I've seen her flinch when the bus comes. Her bag's been torn, she avoids eye contact, and she wrote down that no one believes her. That's not just adjusting." The principal sighed softly, folding her hands. "Mr. Hart, unless a parent files a formal complaint, our hands are tied, we can't act on assumptions." As if on cue, the office door opened. Maria stepped in, still in her hospital scrubs, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked caught off guard seeing me there. "Mrs. Lopez," the principal said warmly, "we were just discussing Lily. Your neighbour here is concerned." Maria's cheeks flushed. She shifted her bag higher on her shoulder and forced a tight smile. "Yes, I've heard. Look, I appreciate the concern, but Lily's fine. She's just tired. We've had a lot of changes lately." "Maria," I said quietly, "you saw the note." Her eyes darted to the floor. "She's dramatic sometimes. Kids write things. I don't want this blown out of proportion." The principal nodded approvingly, as if the matter had been settled. "Exactly. We'll keep an eye on her, of course. But for now, I think we can agree there's no real issue." I wanted to argue, to slam my fist on the desk and demand they see what I saw. But I also saw the way Maria's shoulders drooped, how tired she was, how badly she wanted to believe her daughter was just fine. So I left the office, my boots echoing down the quiet hallway. The sound felt heavier than it should, like each step was dragging the weight of silence with it. Fine. That word again. Everyone kept saying she was fine, but fine wasn't what I saw in Lily's eyes each morning. Fine wasn't a child clenching her backpack like a lifeline. Walking out into the afternoon sun, I realised something with a hard certainty. If the school wasn't going to listen, and even her own mother couldn't face it yet, then the only way the truth would come out was if I found it myself. That Saturday morning, I was tightening a loose hinge on my front door when Mr. Dalton waved me over from across the courtyard. He was holding his tablet, eyes wide the way people look when they've seen something they wish they hadn't. Inside his kitchen, surrounded by seed packets and a pot of coffee, he set the tablet on the table. "Take a look at this." My doorbell camera picked it up. The footage showed the bus stop. Lily appeared in her pink coat, small as ever. The bigger boy stepped in front of her, blocking her way. He gave her backpack a shove that nearly knocked her sideways. She froze, clutching the straps, while another kid laughed. The bus pulled up, door open, driver staring straight ahead, not lifting a finger. My chest tightened. It wasn't in my head, it wasn't just worry. There it was, proof. "Thought you should see," Dalton said quietly. "Kids can be rough, sure, but that's not rough, that's mean." I thanked him, and he sent the video to my phone. All afternoon I carried it like a weight in my pocket, waiting for the right moment. When I finally caught Maria outside that evening, unloading groceries from her car, I showed her the clip. She watched without a word. Her face drained of colour. For a second I thought she might break down right there in the parking lot. But then she shook her head hard, like she was trying to shake off the truth itself. I can't go to the school with this," she whispered. "If they think she's weak, if the other kids find out she complained, it'll only make things worse for her. You don't understand what that does to a child's life in a small town." "Maria," I said gently, "she's already carrying that weight alone. Look at her face, she's terrified." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she looked away. "You think I don't see it? I do. Every night she crawls into my bed shaking, but I work nights. I'm barely keeping the lights on. If I push too hard, if she gets labelled, she'll never forgive me for making it bigger than it already is. She turned back to the trunk, lifted the bags with trembling hands, and shut it harder than she needed to. Please, just let me handle it. Her car pulled out of the lot, leaving me alone in the fading light. I stood there with the proof glowing on my phone screen, more certain than ever. Maria wasn't blind, she wasn't careless, she was afraid of rocking a boat that was already sinking. But fear wouldn't protect Lily. Fear had only kept her silent. The following week, I forced myself to stand farther back from the stop, pretending I was just out for a morning walk. I told myself I was only watching, only keeping an eye on things. But deep down, I think I was waiting for proof I couldn't argue with. Something so clear, even Maria couldn't turn away. That morning, the bus came later than usual. The kids grew restless, kicking at the gravel, trading shoves. Lily stood at the edge of the curb, her backpack clutched tight. The bigger boy circled behind her like it was a game only he understood. I could feel my hands balling into fists, but I stayed put. Finally, the bus groaned around the corner and stopped hard, brakes squealing. The door hissed open. As Lily stepped forward, the boy shoved her shoulder just as the bus lurched. She lost her footing and went down, catching herself against the metal step with a sharp cry. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The driver glanced in the mirror, then waved her on impatiently, as if a child slipping under his nose was nothing worth noticing. Lily climbed up, her knees scraped, face pale, and slid into a seat without a sound. Not a single kid said anything. Silence wrapped around her like another layer of punishment. My chest burned as I watched the bus pull away. That single shove could have sent her under the wheel. One more inch, one less second, and it would have been a headline, not a bruise. That night, I couldn't shake the sound of her cry echoing in my ears. I sat at my kitchen table staring at Dalton's video, replaying it again and again until my knuckles hurt from gripping the phone. Proof of bullying was one thing, but this was danger. The next morning, I didn't bother pretending anymore. I knew I couldn't keep standing back, couldn't wait for someone else to take the lead. If silence was all the adults had to offer, then it was up to me to break it. The next morning, I left my apartment with a decision already made. No more watching from the sidelines, no more hoping someone else would step in. When I reached the bus stop, Lily was already there, her pink coat zipped up tight, eyes fixed on the pavement. A couple of other parents stood nearby, sipping coffee, half distracted by their phones. The bigger boy was there too, his smirk easy, his voice louder than it needed to be. I crossed the street and planted myself a few feet away from Lily. She glanced at me quickly, then dropped her gaze. I gave her a small nod, nothing more. The bus came rumbling round the corner, brakes whining. As it slowed, the boy stepped in front of Lily again, blocking her path. His hand shot out toward her backpack strap, the same way I'd seen before. "Hey," my voice carried sharper than I expected. "That's enough." The boy froze. The other kids looked around, startled. One of the parents shifted uncomfortably. I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm but firm. "You don't put your hands on her, not today, not tomorrow, not ever." The driver glanced down from his seat, clearly annoyed at the delay. "Let's go, folks, get on." I turned toward him, my jaw tight. "She doesn't move until this stops, do you understand me?" For the first time, the boy's confidence cracked. He looked at the driver, then at the other parents. No one rushed to defend him. Lily clutched her backpack tighter, her small body trembling. One of the mothers, a woman I'd seen at the stop before, finally spoke. "I've noticed it too. He's been bothering her every morning." Her words broke the silence like glass shattering. Another parent muttered agreement. The boy's smirk vanished completely. Lily stepped carefully onto the bus, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe someone had finally said out loud what she'd been living with. I stayed where I was until she was seated, then gave the driver a long, steady look. He said nothing, just shut the doors and pulled away. The other parents avoided my eyes, some embarrassed, some thoughtful. But I had seen it, the shift. For the first time, the silence had cracked. As I walked back toward my apartment, my hands still shaking from the confrontation, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But at least now the truth was out in the open. And once it's spoken, it's harder to ignore. Word travelled faster than I expected. By the afternoon, parents were whispering in the parking lot, in the hallways, on the phone. What had been hidden in plain sight was now out in the open, impossible to brush aside. That evening, I was called back to the school for a meeting. Maria was there, sitting stiffly at the end of a long table, her scrubs wrinkled from another overnight shift. She looked smaller than usual, her hands wrapped tight around a paper cup of coffee. The principal sat across from us, eyes darting between a stack of folders and the people in the room. A teacher, Ms. Carter, cleared her throat. 2 other students came forward today, she said. One admitted she was shoved in the aisle last month. Another said she's been told to stay quiet or she'd regret it. They both described the same boy. Maria's face crumpled just for a second before she smoothed it back into composure. I didn't want to believe it, she whispered. I thought if I ignored it, maybe it would fade. Her voice cracked, and she pressed the cup tighter against her chest. But it didn't fade. It just grew. I looked at her, not with blame, but with something closer to relief. Finally, she was saying the words out loud. Finally, she was choosing her daughter over silence. The principal tried to hold her ground, talking about policies and investigations, but the room had shifted. Parents who had once been silent now spoke up. One father said he'd seen his own daughter cry before the bus, but never knew why. Another admitted he had brushed it off as kids, just being rough. It wasn't just about Lily anymore. The silence had been protecting more than one child. Maria set her cup down, her voice steadier now. No more excuses. No more pretending she's fine. My daughter deserves better. All of them do. For the first time, the principal didn't argue. She nodded stiffly, knowing the tide had turned. Walking out of that meeting, I felt the night air hit my face, cool and sharp. The school could talk about policy all it wanted, but the truth had finally broken free. And truth has a way of spreading, even when it starts with one quiet voice and a note that said, "No one believes me." A few weeks later, the mornings at the bus stop felt different. The air was the same, crisp, cool, carrying the smell of damp grass, but the silence had changed. Parents stood closer now, talking quietly, keeping watch. The bigger boy had been moved to another route, the driver reassigned under new oversight. The stop itself had shifted too, marked with brighter paint and a new sign, as if the street itself had been forced to pay attention. But the real change was harder to measure. Lily still carried the same backpack I had patched, the silver clip with the tiny star dangling at her side. She still kept her eyes down sometimes, and she still startled when a bus brake squealed too loud. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Scars don't vanish just because adults finally notice. And yet there were differences. One morning, as the bus door opened, Lily glanced back at me. Her shoulders didn't shrink this time. Instead, she gave the smallest nod, like a quiet promise that she could face the ride ahead. Another morning, she slid into a seat beside a girl from her class and whispered something that made them both giggle. Maria told me later that Lily had begun drawing again, not dark scribbles of faceless figures, but little sketches of flowers and animals. She still had nightmares, but now she let her mother sit with her until she fell back asleep. It was slow, uneven, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it was real. One afternoon, Maria found me by the mailboxes. She pressed a folded page into my hand, her eyes tired but softer than before. She wanted you to have this, she said. I opened it. Crayon lines filled the paper. A yellow bus, a bright sun, children waving from the windows. At the curb stood a small figure in a pink coat, and beside her, a man with a silver star on the strap of a backpack. Beneath it, written in uneven letters, "You saw me." I swallowed hard, tucking the drawing carefully into my jacket. We like to think protecting a child means solving everything, fixing every bruise, silencing every fear. But sometimes it starts smaller. Sometimes it begins with noticing what everyone else looks past, with saying out loud what others stay quiet about. That little girl still has miles to walk, but she no longer walks them alone. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Silence can wound deeper than words, but one person willing to listen can change the story. 3 words drawn in crayon say it best. You saw me. Every story leaves behind a lesson, and this one is simple but heavy with truth. Children often speak in silence before they ever find the courage to use words. If we ignore the small signs, the flinch, the quiet, the scribbled note, we risk letting pain grow in the shadows. Listening isn't always about answers. Sometimes it's just about being there so a child knows they're not invisible. But here's the question I want to leave with you. Have you ever seen a moment when someone seemed fine on the outside, yet something told you they weren't? Did you trust your instinct, or did you turn away? Think about it and share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who might read your words and feel less alone. Thank you for spending this time with us. Take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and remember, every small act of kindness matters. We'll see you in the next story, right here on Rain Inside.